Brandon Ayuk, though, is not going anywhere. And that was another part of today I thought was interesting. And this is another one. It's like, I wouldn't question what they said about Trey if they didn't, say way more definitive things about other guys. I mean, they basically squashed the trade rumors. They didn't squash the trade rumors of Trey Lance. They kind of acknowledged that they're there, but kind of were non-committal whether a deal's going to get done or not. Kind of sounded skeptical. But with Aiyuk, it was like they've made a decision to keep him going forward, and they're not entertaining trades. That's what I got out of that. That they're all about this year, and they view Aiyuk as a key cog for this year. And so, even though he's got the high cap number, even though they're paying a bunch of guys, they made it perfectly clear that next year we'll see, but this year Aiyuk's here.
Yeah, it was like the three levels of trades. It's,
right.
We're listening to a guy this year in Trey Lance. We'll see what happens. Brandon Ayuk's here for this year, but we don't know about the future. But for this year, we like him on the team. And then Nick Bosa, it's like, no chance. You got zero shot to come get Nick Bosa. Don't even try. Those were the three levels. And we saw all three play out in this press conference. It was kind of interesting to see.
But listening to Lynch today, he was not iffy at all about it. They're going forward with Aiyuk. I don't know, but if you ask me to, guess, I would say Ayuk's a Niner this year for sure. But Ayuk's probably traded next year. That's what I took out of today. Just that Bosa's here and Bosa's going to be here, and don't bother calling for Bosa. Aiyuk, call me next year. I'm going with him this year. Trey, if you want him, call me this week. You know what I mean? Because he's definitely available. That's kind of my takeaway on the Aiyuk front. You could replace him, and so I think they're open-minded. But it sounds like if they've made any decision, it's that they'd rather keep him.
Yeah, and if they draft another guy, I'm curious to see, are the 49ers just getting a lot more shrewd in their player personnel decision-making? Is that what it's coming down to? Because if that's the case, and they're willing to get rid of, Trey Sermon after a year, get rid of Trey Lance after 2 years after spending all of that, what's to say that Danny Gray can't be cut this offseason? Or Ambry Thomas or some of these other guys that have been here a year or two, or TDP. If this is the route they're going, where it's like, hey, if you don't fit the timeline to win this year, you can be gone. And anybody else that fits that timeline, they can be here, regardless of age, regardless of where they came from, regardless of pay. None of that matters right now. We're going to win this year. That is the goal. And we're going to do everything we can to do that. And if you don't fit that timeline or you can't contribute right now, might be sayonara for you. Is that the route that we're going? And that, if so, that's a pretty interesting way to go about it.
Well, I think it is. It's a great question because it's like, this last year they had a bunch of rookies. They kind of went with a whole developmental element. Is that just for 1 year? Do they believe in that continuously? I kind of wonder too. It's like, people say, well, why would you get rid of Lance? Well, if it's not, to me, the only thing that makes any sense getting rid of Lance is the timeline. That you somehow feel like your timeline is you need guys who can win with right now, and you just don't feel like he's ready to play. But then, do you feel like Jake Haener is ready to play? What if some team in the third round with Jake Haener on the board offers you a pick for Trey Lance? Would they do that to Jake Haener and say, hey, we'll trade you Trey Lance for, a third-round pick and then turn around and draft a guy like Jake Haener? Haener's more polished, you could argue, than Lance and ready to play right now, but Lance has got more upside and a significantly bigger, stronger athlete. But they could look at, there's a few guys in this draft. Clayton Tune, maybe to a lesser degree, Jaron Hall and Max Duggan, DTR, Jake Haener, guys who have played a lot of college football, who they could theoretically say, you know what, we think that DTR is more ready to play than Trey Lance, and we're going to make a move based on that. To me, that would really be selling low on Trey Lance, but we don't know. We don't know exactly how they feel. It's been a weird off season for them when it comes to Trey, because they haven't really ever given him an endorsement, like where they're saying, you know what, he may have an uphill battle, but we really believe he's going to get there, and we can't wait to see him develop. Nothing, even a throwaway comment like that. Nope, he's not getting that comment. They're not saying that. They're not saying, hey, you know what? We've seen some really good things, and we really like his development, and he's coming on. And we're going to start with Brock, but man, anything can happen, and you never know. And no, we're not getting that. So makes you.
I think they're just that sold on Brock. I mean, I don't understand it. I don't get it, but that's where they're at, and that's fine if that's the decision making. But the question is this: so then, what do they do at quarterback? Let's say they do trade Trey Lance. Well, you're going to have to for sure draft a quarterback, and then you're also going to have to pick up a free agent, whether it's after the draft and you get an undrafted rookie, or you go get somebody else, because you still need three arms in camp, and Brock Purdy's not going to be one of them, most likely, at least not for the first half of it. So you're going to need a third arm no matter what. So if you remove Trey, that leaves Sam Darnold. There's two more arms that you've got to go get somehow, some way. So yeah, if that's the case, if they get rid of Trey Lance and legitimately use that pick on another quarterback, dude, that's I mean, talk about just willing to sacrifice everything, because now it's like, well, dude, if Trey Lance starts for another team and looks better than all of your quarterbacks, that's a bad look.
Oh, I know. Absolutely. I mean, if Trey Lance becomes an outstanding starting quarterback, no matter even if you moved him for a third round pick, you're still going to wind up looking really bad on the back end. So it's like, if you're going to move him, you better make sure that you get something, and you better make sure you win, and you better make sure that Brock Purdy's the guy. And if you have any doubts about that, you probably shouldn't make the deal. But I just, once again, it's like I'm keep waiting for them they have multiple opportunities to kind of paint a picture of a belief in their young quarterback, and they never do. They never really say, hey, you know what, we really like what we're seeing and this and that. It's just kind of like, he's here now, and we expect him to be here, but you won't guarantee it, because that means you pretty much guaranteed Aiyuk and Bosa will be here, but you won't guarantee Trey's going to be here. So that one's a bizarre one.
But they don't. Also, though, I want to say this. We'll see how they handle Brock Purdy, but they don't really endorse quarterbacks, period. I mean, how many flyers, just from the beginning of Trey Lance's career, like not just now after you've seen him for 2 years, but when you trade everything to go get him, you would think that guy would have been like the feature of Brick by Brick, or he would have been a banner hanging from the stadium, or he would have been on every flyer that you print out, every jersey that you're marketing, every interview you can get him into. No, it wasn't any of that. You didn't see any of those things with Jimmy either. They did the banner on the stadium, but they weren't brick by brick and mic'd up and none of that stuff with Jimmy Garoppolo. It's kind of what they do. This is a head coach that believes he's the reason that this team ticks. This is a team that emulates that by saying all the things that they say. Hey, quarterback doesn't matter as long as we're healthy. We just need a guy that can pull the trigger. That's all we care about. All the players say those things, and then they show it through their media presence, and they have shown it for the last few years. So I hope for Brock's sake and for their sake, if Brock Purdy, they believe, is the guy, whether he ends up being or not, I hope they pour a little bit more into him than they have with Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance.